In China, after meeting President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi, the Russian president said NATO's eastward enlargement would have to be addressed for there to be sustainable peace in Ukraine. Our next report now getting you the latest from the battlefield and how things are moving on the diplomatic chessboard. A thunderous roar, then silence. A Russian Iskander missile, precise and devastating, ripped through the night, obliterating a critical Neptune missile system. This is not merely a loss of hardware, it's a strategic blow, undermining Ukraine's attack capabilities and sending ripples through Kiev. Russia has increased the intensity of attacks on Ukraine. On the ground also, Russian forces are constantly moving forward. Russian Defense Ministry claiming that approximately 1,245 Ukrainian troops were killed in the last 24 hours. A grim tally underscoring the relentless pressure on the ground. However, independent verification of the claims is not possible due to the fog of the war. Russian strikes have plunged over 60,000 homes into darkness, particularly in the vital Odessa region. President Putin, speaking from Tianjin after talks with President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, issued a stern rebuke to the West. He lambasted NATO enlargement, asserting forcefully that the root causes of the war must be eliminated.
The second reason for the crisis is the West's constant attempts to draw Ukraine into NATO, which, as we have repeatedly emphasized and said over many years, represents a direct threat to Russia's security.
Now, on the other hand, President Zelensky plans to meet with European leaders in Paris on September 4, as he is urging his allies to do more to help end the war. With missiles slamming Ukrainian defenses, homes plunged into darkness, the war is grinding into an even darker phase. One where firepower and geopolitics collide head-on. Bureau Report, WION The World. Our next story is about a rather interesting trend that's being witnessed. Chinese students heading to Southeast Asia for higher education. This is as per a report by South China Morning Post. Let's just break this down for you and give you a better sense of what's being reported and what's playing out. According to Education Malaysia Global Services, a government-owned company in Malaysia responsible for managing student visas, Chinese applications saw a rise in the first half of this year, reportedly, as compared to the figures reported for the same period of 2024 and the figure recorded in 2023. That's a sample of what's been reported. In fact, the immediate question that also comes up is what explains this? Which are the factors at play? Also, which are the countries part of that list of these destinations? Interestingly, in focus is Southeast Asia, not parts like Europe or the United States. And what's been playing out is closely tied to manufacturing firms expanding abroad. There's also the aspect of China's slowing economy. And if that continues to happen, affordability is a key factor. Simply put, making Southeast Asia manageable for middle-class families. So basically, Malaysia serves as a rather attractive destination, for instance, because of factors like lower tuition, also affordable living costs. Thailand and Indonesia are also options. In fact, for example, data from the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization indicating a jump in Chinese student enrollment in Thailand when comparing the figures of 2016 and 2024. So that's telling as well. In fact, as per the report, members of the ASEAN bloc of Southeast Asian countries have become a new frontier for Chinese capital. And there's also the aspect of rising graduate unemployment in China, which is leading to students opting for postgraduate degrees abroad. But at the same time, there is caution being sounded off by experts. For example, about how opportunities in Southeast Asia might not be as high as people imagine, and a number of parameters at play which will govern whether this trend lasts and whether it continues in the long term. Meanwhile, the market's expecting a tectonic shift in the global trade order, with the world's established trade routes and geopolitical alliances under strain. The recent Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Tianjin emerging not merely as a diplomatic meeting, but one that has investors watching very closely. The seemingly cordial handshake between the Indian Prime Minister and the Chinese President was more than just a gesture. It was a powerful signal to global markets that the two Asian giants are recalibrating their compass away from a unipolar US-centric world order. And this perceived thaw in relations has sent out a ripple of optimism through the Indian markets. The Sensex and Nifty indices have logged solid gains, but the real story is in the targeted sectoral rallies. Beyond the headlines, the summit's assurances on rare earth and raw material supply from China has turbocharged India's renewable energy and electric vehicle sectors. Shares of EV makers rallied sharply, benefiting from the prospect of a more stable supply chain for its products. Gold and other safe haven assets, meanwhile, rallied sharply on Indian exchanges, hitting fresh all-time highs on the back of geopolitical uncertainty and a weaker Indian rupee. The Indian rupee also hit a record low against the US dollar today, and this reflects a broader sense of caution among investors, despite the sector-specific gains. The geopolitical chessboard is also impacting the skies. The restoration of direct flights between the two nations is a potential boon for the aviation and tourism industries. While direct stock impacts in China remain nuanced, the market has taken note. And the market reaction was felt globally. In Asia, the SEO summit's outcome contributed to a positive sentiment. European stocks, meanwhile, were also seen to be trading higher, though US markets were closed for a holiday, which kept trading volumes thin. Public opinion regarding the war in Gaza is seeing a major shift. New polling data showing support for Israel slipping sharply, especially among America's youngest voters. A survey conducted by Harvard Cap's Harris poll asked more than 2,000 registered voters a straight question. In the war between Israel and Hamas, who do you support more? And the results reveal a major generational divide. Let's break it down for you. Nearly 6 in 10 Americans between the ages of 18 and 24 said that they stand with Hamas rather than Israel, while older generations, in contrast, favored Israel. The survey numbers depicting the generational contrast. Roughly 2/3 of Americans between 25 and 34 support Israel. 7 in 10 of those between 35 and 44 take Israel's side and support climbing as high as 89% among those over 65. And the survey by the American market research and analytics company and the Harvard University also asked whether Israel's war campaign in Gaza amounts to genocide. On this question, the public split evenly. Half said yes, half said no. And when asked about criticism of Israel, 51% of the respondents said it stems primarily from concern about Palestinian human rights, not anti-Semitism. And these results perhaps depict a fundamental change in how Americans are viewing the conflict, especially the younger generations. You see, for decades now, Israel has counted on strong support in the United States. But this poll perhaps indicates that support is weakening and the generational gap is driving that factor. Nearly 2 years into the war, more than 63,000 Palestinians have died in Gaza, famine spreading through the enclave, deepening an already catastrophic humanitarian crisis. Israel also faces mounting legal pressure. Last November, the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants, remember, for Prime Minister Netanyahu and his former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, accusing them of war crimes and crimes against humanity. Israel is not just losing support within America, but also around the world in many ways. Greta Thunberg, the Swedish climate activist, has joined a flotilla bound for Gaza this week. Dozens of ships are preparing to sail from Tunisia and other parts later this week, aiming to challenge Israel's blockade with a symbolic protest. And according to Israeli newspaper, the country's national security minister is reportedly drafting plans to detain Thunberg and other activists under harsh terrorist-level conditions, quote-unquote, in Israeli prisons. His proposal that would reportedly be presented before Netanyahu also includes seizing the ships and converting them into vessels for police use. Amid all of this, the Trump administration is reportedly floating a radical new plan for Gaza's future. According to the Washington Post, the proposal envisions placing Gaza under U.S. trusteeship for at least a decade. The document, reportedly 38 pages long, outlining an economic blueprint to transform Gaza into both a tourist resort and a tech hub. Palestinians who agree to relocate outside the enclave would receive financial incentives, including rent subsidies and food assistance. And the plan projects that up to a quarter of Gaza's population might permanently leave during reconstruction. Inside Israel, leaked documents are raising new questions about the military strategy. A classified assessment circulating within the Israel Defense Forces concluding that the major offensive launched against Hamas in May failed to achieve its central goal. It reportedly states that Israel, quote-unquote, made every possible mistake in executing the campaign. Every possible mistake. Together, the survey data, the humanitarian catastrophe, the situation, the legal challenges, even Israel's own internal assessments, pointing to a rather sobering reality. Israel is losing not just on the battlefield of global opinion, but also when it comes to the confidence of its allies and its own military ranks in a way.